Good afternoon, friends. It's been a long day, so I'll try to make it short and quick. I think everyone is aching to go home. When we talk about urban transportation in the context of Aizawl, we could say that things are done very, very manually, and the operations of buses, which is holding the bulk of the public transportation, is doing well as it is, but I think there is a lot of room for improvement. Some of the things that I will be talking about at this juncture is that I'll try to give a picture of the present scenario. At present, we have around 262 buses flying in the city of Aizawl, and out of those 262 buses, every day about 40 buses are made to be on hold, and the rest are flying within the city. The buses which are flying in the city are owned individually. Some people, one owner might be owning 1, 2, or 3 buses, but the ownership is quite scattered, and which is making it very, very difficult for the government to give a proper direction. And some of the things that we can do to improve our urban transportation is that the whole operation system needs to be restructured, and that can only be done once the government steps in. We have the Aizawl Town City Bus Owners Association, which is responsible for the flying of the city buses. Of course, the licenses are given by the Transport Department, but the management itself is done by the Aizawl City Bus Owners Association. And the government, other than giving the licensing, has very, very, very little intervention. So what we can do is, in order to, you see the kind of buses that are flying. We have the 407 like LPK buses, which are flying mostly in the city. Under the Department of Urban Development, there is a plan to improve the urban transportation sector. We have been giving assistance, technical assistance by the Asian Development Bank. Technical assistance has been given for a project called Sustainable Urban Transport in Aizawl City. The component of this project is to have, like, similar to what Captain Pathani has mentioned, we are planning to introduce roadways in the east to west corridor of Aizawl City. And with that, we are also planning to procure over 300 buses. And these buses are, according to what we're planning to procure state-of-the-art buses. Some of the buses will have to be planning to be air-conditioned buses. The idea is that public transport system has to be attractive to the general public. It has to be preferred to your private cars. So, because we know that private cars, there are only 2 or 3 riders in one car, and they take up a lot of space, the road space. And in order, once we improve the public transport system, the number of cars flying will decrease, because people will, in one way or the other, prefer to the improved buses. And this is the project is being formulated. Correspondences have been sent to Government of India back and forth, and we are on to it. And once this project is finalized, I think we can have some improvement in the urban transport sector in Aizawl. Of course, when we talk about digital revolution, as I have mentioned, being in a remote place in northeast India, it's very, very difficult to leverage the IT advantages that we have. But at the same time, like the session chair has mentioned, the drivers and the general public are very, very disciplined in their driving, and that is one of the advantages that we often talk about. We often refer Mizoram to as a honkless city, and we just don't honk our horns needlessly. When you go to the streets or when you travel, you will find that people are not generally honking their horns needlessly, and I think that that is unique in a sense if you compare it with some of the cities and places with the rest of the country. I think that is one of the things that we can do. For some of you who are familiar with the development in urban transportation, we know that Gujarat, Ahmedabad, has been championing the bus rapid transit system, BRTS, as we all know it. And I have had the chance to go to Ahmedabad and witness the transportation system. And they have a very, very good system where the IT has been put to use, where they are able to monitor the locations of the buses from the control center, and which I think can be replicated in many parts of the country. But being in a hilly terrain, like in Aizawl, it's very, very difficult to have a BRT system because the roads are very, very narrow. If you look at Aizawl, the width of the road can be categorized into maybe to 2 or 3. So the narrowest would be around 6.5 meters, and the second narrowest would be around 8 meters, and the widest would be around 10.5 only. So if you look at the width of the road that we have here, planning a BRT system is not practical, and so we have to find an alternative for that. And as I have said, as I've mentioned, one of the alternatives that we have toying with is the introduction of the cable car systems. We are in talk with the Government of India, as I've mentioned, and once this is put in place, I think most of the congestion and the urban mobility will be improved in to some aspect. And when this can once we are able to put in place this system, I think some of the intelligent transportation systems like the GPS, in-pavement loops, and infrared systems, laser for locating the buses and the whereabouts of the buses for safety of the public, I think can also be introduced within the system. But as we know, the buses that we have are individually owned. One of the plans is that once we, if and when we procure the buses, these buses, I think, will be managed through contracts. Instead of a person owning so many or managing so many, 1 or 2 buses only, I think the best way and the best plan is to deploy the buses under the management of 2 or 3 contractors only, so that they can, so that they will be able to make profits from the fleet of buses that are under their hands. Because if a person owns only about 1 or 2 buses, and if he's trying to make huge profit, it's not entirely possible, because the route where the bus is flying will not be as profitable as some of the other routes where other buses are flying. So taking that into account, I think it would be best once the buses are procured to be given to some contractors who will be able to manage it efficiently. Or the next option is that the whole public transport system can be corporatized, like the Janmark in Ahmedabad, which I have mentioned. If there's a corporation where the buses are managed by one corporation, I think that will be very, very good for Aizawl as well. So those are the things which I have mentioned. If you like, one of the speakers from just before me mentioned that the smart city in Sikkim they have been doing a lot of things. But for Aizawl, we qualified for the Smart City competition only last year, and we are still at a very, very nascent stage. The Aizawl Smart City Limited is to be registered under the Companies Act, which the government has already applied for. We are expecting it to have the registration within a few weeks or so. And once we have the registration, we can start rolling the ball, and we welcome every kind of suggestions or inputs from the public or technocrats or technical personnel. And with that, I conclude my speech. Thank you so very much.